recall about 6 decades back when I came to Delhi as a student, Gunnar Myrdal had just written a book. He talked about India as a soft state. I think it is an achievement itself that now we are not considered a soft state, but we are very seriously taken as a soft power.
Yeah.
And I think soft power, to my mind, is as important as any other form of power, because if you recall the definition of power, and I don't want to make it a classroom lecture, Bertrand Russell famously said that power is our capacity to make others do what we want to do. So coercive power is one thing, and soft power, it's been translated brilliantly, Joshiji and others, is Soumya Shakti. And he was instrumental in having a book about India's soft power, and I think that is what makes me really proud, that India is a unique civilization which has a capacity to emerge as a major power and also has a potential of soft power which is unmatched.
I think it is, because we are probably the only country in the world who boasts of such a rich culture, heritage, language, food. I mean, Indian food, I think you go to the smallest towns and cities in the world, you will find someone or the other serving Indian food. And I think a lot of our food also has a history. For example, I was reading something that you had written on the galoti kebab, and how, you know, the cook or the kind of made it because of the herbs that the Hakim had said. So can you share a little bit about that? Because the Nawab couldn't...
No, you're making life very difficult for me. You are quoting something from my writing which I don't want to be reminded of. And
okay.
Not that I wrote a lie or something, but I think why begin with the galoti kebab? Why not begin with kheer? The kheer shagar on which Vishnu reposes, and with the Lakshmi, and unki nabhi se kamal nikal raha jisse Brahma baithe hue hain, and that is the Brahman, that is the Parman. The kheer is the thing, the kheer unites, you go across the timeline and you go across the geography of India, it becomes payash, chhena payash, it becomes paripu payasam deep down south where neither milk nor rice is there. So I think I would much rather talk of kheer and khichdi and things of that kind, which are essentially all parts of India would have one form the other. Or halwa maybe, which Menka gives to Vishwamitra, and then you have halwa which is gosht ka halwa bhi ho sakta hai, habshi halwa bhi ho sakta hai, and you know, you have anjeer ka halwa, you have seb ka halwa, you have gajar ka halwa, you have dal ka halwa, you have sohan halwa jozi, you have godhum halwa, you have unmentionable Karachi halwa which becomes Sindhi halwa or Bombay halwa. So I would say that when we talk of food, let us not talk of a small dhaba who's serving a galoti kebab imitation or a kali dal makhni. No, I mean, allow me to finish. You see, I am really obsessed about this. When you talk of food, you are not talking of a pani puri and a puchka and a samosa and say whose samosa is this, whose puchka puri it is. I think Joshiji is a far greater wide insight into this.
Yeah.
Food includes agriculture. When we talk of food in India and soft power, let's not forget we are the largest exporter of vegetables, fruits, milk, sugar and things of that kind, including rice. अभी थोड़ा दिक्कत हो गई, प्याज व्याज में हमारा हाथ थोड़ा तंग हो गया है. टमाटर तो खैर हमारा था ही नहीं, पुर्तगाल से आया था, पुर्तगाली लाए थे, उसको छोड़िए. But I would say that is what our strengths are. And then there is a way you treat food, processed food. You also have utensils in food is cooked. You have a relationship with food of rituals and fairs and festivals. वो खीर की बात अगर आप करेंगे तो दिवाली को थोड़ी छोड़ देंगे. But I think, when we talk of food, let's not talk of restaurants which have got Michelin stars abroad or dhabas which have made food popular for everybody. I would much rather say how the food binds the great nation together. Kashmir ka kesar or kesri bhat south ka.
This is where my point, which I will ask you for, sorry to interrupt you, is we get, for example, South Indian food in South India versus South Indian food in North India. में ज़मीन आसमान का फर्क होता है.
I mean, this session is on soft power or food power?
We are starting with food,
so,
and then we go
I
to
thought
soft.
that since we are approaching the lunch, you are more focused on the food. But
No, I said it's always
my
nice.
honest submission is that soft power is much more beyond the food.
Yes.
You should go beyond the food and understand about the soft power. And I will begin with this, that as you pointed out, we boast about culture. We do not boast about culture. We have that culture on which we all are proud of.
Yeah.
If you go to any other country and when you say that I am from India, what is the first reaction of a foreigner? They say, you are from India, you have a great culture. They don't say you are a great military power. They don't say you are a great scientific power. They don't say you are a great economic power. What is your identity? My identity is my culture.
Yeah.
So culture is not just a soft power for me. Culture is a matter for identity for me. And it does not only belong to idli, dosa or giloti kebab. It's much more than that. It's the sanskar, it's the rituals, it's the fairs and festivals, the way we live, the way we lead our life. And that is called Indianness. That is called Bharatiyata. So, I mean, when we talk about soft power, why we are talking about soft power? Because in 1990, Joseph Nye has coined a term known as soft power. But we are there as a civilization for more than 7,000, 8,000 years. And we have been surviving on the essence of our own cultural traditions, our heritage. I mean, we had invasions for more than 1,000 years. People have come, they have tried to ruin our culture. They have burned the whole of Nalanda library. But does it ruin our culture? Does it ruin anything which belongs to us? No.
I think we have a very strong heritage, as you rightly
That's
said.
what I'm saying.
That our grounding, our values, our morals are very, very strong and ingrained. And that is where we are respected the world over.
Yes,
even
exactly.
when our kids kind of go out. So, if I were to ask you one more thing, our country has a lot of UNESCO World Heritage sites. When we travel overseas, I feel that their marketing, you want to go see a rock, you want to see a garden, they market it very well. Why do you think, this question is for both of you, why do you think we are not being able to kind of market or get visitors to our heritage sites?
Yeah. So I'll give you an interesting analogy that basically, I mean, I have written a paper on that also, and that interestingly was read in the Museum Expo, International Museum Expo. And I read a paper on demuseumization. Can you understand? You see, we are not basically a museum and archive people because we live culture. I mean, our creativity does not enable us only to keep that in museums and archives and culture. It is not something which is only to be shown. It is something which is to be used and internalized.
And experienced.
It is a way of our life. Yeah. You see, when you are enjoying a festival, when you are organizing a festival, when you are dancing, it is not to show someone else. It is only to your own enlightenment and enjoyment.
Right.
So that has happened. What has happened? We had rich cultural heritage, but we had it because we had it. We never wanted to sort of propagate it. All these UNESCO World Heritage norms and nominations, I mean, that is a construct developed by the European countries. Unfortunately, we are unable to fill up even their forms. I mean, we, as a Ministry of Culture, we struggle to find people who can fill up those forms, who can do the nominations. That does not mean that we don't have that much of heritage property.
No, we have it. But what I'm trying to say is that despite having it, like our temples, I think it's beautiful. It's absolutely mind-blowing if you compare it even on the world arena. But somewhere I feel the mindset is such that बहुत गंदा है. We don't maintain it. Why do you think that we don't?
You know, I don't think it's a question of maintenance. I think Joshi ji has put it brilliantly. We are inheritors to a civilization, heritage, cultural, which is resplendent and at the same time which is diverse and pluralistic.
Yeah.
India has been at the crossroads of the Silk Route and the Spice Road, maritime ones.
Both.
It has crisscrossed here. And when we talk of India, we are talking of an undivided India, not necessarily in the context of Akhanda Bharat, but from Darre Khyber to jungles of Arakan, from Himalayas to oceans, and we have a relationship which is not confined or rediscovered recently, Indian diaspora abroad. You go to Indonesia, and you have the empires of Shailendra and Majapahit, and you go to even the Malay Peninsula. You say Bhasa Jiva Bangsha in Bhasa Malayu. You don't have to translate. It means the language is the life of a nation. And you go to Indonesia, they would be very upset if you said Mahabharata is ours. They say Mahabharata is ours, Ramayana is ours, a different version. And the Sultan of Yogyakarta's daughters used to dance as Sita in the temple in Prambanan. Now we seem to have forgotten. I think Joshiji very rightly said that whether the rest of the world gives us 10 UNESCO sites or 100 doesn't matter. What matters is that I know that in Tanjore, the Bridishwar temple is built by Raj Rajendra Chol, whose armadas went to Southeast Asia. Or I talk in terms of a stoop, the make a stoop, and or I talk of Bodh Gaya or Sarnath, and I recall that there is a Buddhist circuit which connects me all the way to Japan and Korea and Tibet and Mongolia and so on, ups and downs, Myanmar and so on. You have an interesting thing, you have architecture built heritage, which he rightly pointed out is not only food. Now, there is this dome where we are having this discussion.
It all, yeah.
No, we have a dome in Bijapur. Do you remember the Gol Gumbad in Bijapur, which has no pillars around it? You have problems and disputes about where the architecture came from, but the Charbagh concept, the kind of mausoleums which are there, where the original design came from, how it was metamorphed in India. I think India's great genius is synthesizing diverse influences and coming out with something which is more or less universal in aesthetic appeal and can be shared. So it is that which I think is the living heritage, whether it's built up heritage. वो जो संस्कार की बात जोशी जी ने कही ना कि acculturation हमारे यहाँ षोडश संस्कार थे. It's not only the Hindu संस्कार of यज्ञोपवीत, चूड़ाकर्म, विवाह, all the way to Shraddha. But the point is sanskar is the way of becoming refined, becoming more cultured. But that is what our heritage is. And that soft heritage connects us not only to Indian diaspora, whether it is yoga, whether it is Ayurveda, whether it is some elements of food, seasonality, paintings, sculpture, dance forms.
But do you think somewhere, Joshi ji, our Indian culture, जो हम बोल रहे हैं, या संस्कृति, because a lot of our children are now stepping out for college and getting influenced by the Western world, of course with social media, causing havoc. Do you think that this whole thing of not getting married when we want to, not getting into or not understanding India as India, because when I talk to young adults in India, this is something that I really find that marriage is not necessary anymore, Look at the West, everything is so cool. Yeah, even if you're married, the tolerance level is not there. I'm not saying you have to give in, but what I'm saying is somewhere that influence is coming. जब हम सभ्यता की बात करते हैं, तो do you think it's affecting that sabhyata?
Actually, now the trend is different. Now people are going to America and they want to do the marriage in the Indian style. They come to India and they do all the havans and all the rituals they want to do. What is it? I mean, only 5 days earlier I was in Chicago and my friend was saying his wife is an American and he says when I had the grandson, we performed a big havan in my house right in the Chicago. So what is it happening? You try to understand. You see, on one day you have to come back to your own traditions and customs because it is imbibed in your blood. It is imbibed in your way of life. That's why human inherits something, but you can't just continue with that. It has to come back to your own roots. And if you don't go back to your roots, I mean, you are losing your own ground.
Yeah.
So people realize that. I mean, today they may go, they may find something very, very glittering outside and then they go there. But then on one day they realize that no.
So you think the young children will come back to their roots?
That's exactly that is happening. It's a process and we have to understand the process. Like even in India also we are realizing that process. Even in our own house, things are moving in that direction. And one interesting thing, I think Professor Prant is more authoritative on that. We never lived in a linear style. Indian history has never been linear. We are always a circular thing. We know that there is a rotation in life. We never believe in linearity. We always believe in the circularity, in the rotation, chakra. So that chakra is very important. For us, we know that today what is there, it has to come back to us in some time or other.
In some or the other way.
It will come back. And we all believe that. That is why we believe in incarnation. Punarjanma ki jo theory hai, what is that?
Yeah.
Hame malum hai ki they will come back. That is how the tradition goes. So we have to understand that all right, it is a temporary phase. People are going out, they are adopting their own culture, they are adopting their own customs and traditions, but maybe there will be some day when they'll come back and realize, and it is happening in your household, in my household, everybody is
because we are
realizing.
seeing a shift, because I have young adults in the house and I see that shift, that yes, there are parts of them that want to dress up and celebrate your Indian festivals, and then there is this part of them where they don't want to kind of say live in joint setups. they want their freedom. So somewhere I feel that struggle is there in the young or in the youth of the country today.
Now, if you get back to the topic of the discussion, soft power, it is not only the question of a root of an Indian for his or her roots. I think it is the universality, the questions which our ancestors grappled with in Upanishads, existence or non-existence of God, or issues of life and death, what happens after death. So जोशी जी ने जो कहा कि एक पुनर्जन्म है, मगर वो पुनर्जन्म उस क्रूड अर्थ में नहीं है कि आज आप थे कल फिर आपका जन्म होगा, things of that kind. It is in what form you will reincarnate and आवर्तन कैसे चलेगा. तो वो आवर्तन is a spiral upwards movement which might be evolutionary, which might be ideational, and I think what draws other people to India is that India offers them an opportunity to pick and choose from a basket, if I may say so, of ideas and lifestyles and approaches which brings them peace. So they may not be born in India as Indians of Indian parents or NRI Indians, but they have contacted this civilization which is vibrant, pulsating, has survived over millennia, and they think they could either be Buddhists here like Lama, Anagarika, Govinda, and Austrian. They could be somebody like Yehudi Menuhin who started doing Shirshashan with. It might even be George Harrison. It might be somebody else, but it could be people who are drawn to India for a variety of reasons.
Especially yoga, if I was to say.
Yes, and yoga would also not only Hatha Yoga, Pradipika and Ashtanga Yoga and Iyengar Yoga and so on. It could be science
yoga as a science,
No, yoga as a science is much talked about. I'm not talking of Hatha Yoga and physical science. Yoga is also Yoga Karmasu Kaushadam. Jnana Yoga bhi hai, Raj Yoga bhi hai, Bhakti Yoga bhi hai. So if you go to the Bhakti Yoga, then you talk in terms of the confluence of the Islamic Sufi tradition and the Bhakti movement. And we had a discussion about social reform movements. So I think India is one of those crucibles which is beautifully alchemic metaphor. There are different chemicals come and we make it into something wonderful.
Do you also think that Ayurveda that we have propagates a large portion of India's soft power?
Yes, of course. As he said, the yoga, Ayurveda is another element of life which propagates the soft power. And many people have started realizing that there is a natural way of living which Ayurveda promotes along with the medicines which have been there. And that has been practiced through decades and centuries ago. I mean, the Sushrut and Charak, they are not born only yesterday.
No, those are
and it is a whole science which is a written science, which is a very well documented science. And very interestingly, a couple of days back, somebody told me that there is a tribal tradition where a Baga, a tribal who have never read the Charak Samhita maybe, practiced the kind of medicines which are given in Charak Samhita. And he actually applies the same principle with the same metaphor. And that is very interesting. So that shows how the entire tradition flows from maybe saying the Shastras to the Lok, which is the living tradition.
Which is the living tradition.
That is very interesting. So that makes the Ayurveda tradition get along with the people through generations. And now it has been liked by many people in the other parts of the world. There are people who are practicing. Now people know that what is the importance of these koshas
It
and
is,
chakras.
yes. And I find a lot, especially I'm from Uttarakhand and towards Rishikesh, Haridwar side, I find a lot of, in fact, foreigners coming down to practice yoga and Ayurveda.
Ayurveda is being, I mean, they are liking it more, and there are diseases in which only Ayurveda has the solution. And that's very interesting. I mean, all the allopathy and other pathies do not have the solution, but Ayurveda is giving the right solution. So that is the way of life where we have really inspired the whole world.
Yeah. On that note, I guess we're running out of time.
On that note, we're running out of time. We could speak about the subject for hours together, but paucity of time does not allow us to do that. But thank you all for this riveting conversation. A huge round of applause, ladies and gentlemen, for this conversation that we had about India's soft power.
For more such videos, subscribe to the NewsX YouTube channel, hit the bell icon.